Good morning. Thank you for joining us today on another segment of Ask Nina. I have a very special guest here with me today, Patti Smith, who is Patti Smith has many different, hats. Is that what we're talking? One of which is called the Decor Doctor.
Yes.
Decor Doctor, and Patti is a classically trained Feng Shui consultant. And because Feng Shui is something that I talk about quite a bit in my blog posts, as well as some of the videos that I do and some of the posts that I do. Because it always is a very intriguing topic for many. People want to learn more about it, but then they're kind of like at arm's length about it a little bit too, because they're not quite sure if they believe in it. But every time I talk about it, it does cause a conversation because it is a very intriguing topic. And so I thought, you know what? Seeing that we're only 2 weeks into 2019, and the Lunar New Year is actually coming up in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. It's actually February 4th, right? 5th. February 5th. I should know this, right? I thought this would be a perfect time to have a Feng Shui specialist come on and share with us a little bit and talk about the topic with us a little bit. I try to use Feng Shui practices in not just my own home life, but in my business as well, and especially when I'm seeing clients. But my knowledge of Feng Shui is at the very basic level, and so that's why we have a specialist here with us today to talk about some things like that. And if you are watching us live, come on, ask some questions if you like, and I'm sure Patti would be more than happy to answer them for you. And if you are going to watch the replay of this, feel free to ask your questions there as well, because then Patti can also answer them in the comment section. Okay, so why don't we just begin? We had a little bit of a technical difficulty to start off this morning. I'm not quite sure if it's a little bit dark. Does it appear a little bit dark? Little bit. Yeah. But anyway, we're seeable. We're seeable.
We can lean forward a little bit into the light.
Yeah, a little bit. That's right, into the light. How perfect is that?
Yes.
We're actually at Patti's office here in Barrie, and it's such a tranquil and calm place. I feel calm just being here. I feel zen just being here.
Thank you. That was the intent.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So, Patti, tell us a little bit about Feng Shui. Is there really a science behind Feng Shui? I know that Feng Shui has always been part of my cultural background.
Yes.
So for me, it's always been there. I know that it's a belief and a practice that's been used for many thousands of years, but really 6,000 to be precise.
So it kind of works,
Well, that's the thing,
Yes.
Do people say, does it really work? Like, really, is it just a lot of hocus pocus, right? Tell us a little bit about the science behind it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on today, by the
you're
way.
welcome.
For those of you who have struggled with, first of all, the name of this practice, there are multiple pronunciations I've heard, but my teacher said Feng Shui, so I always say to my clients or guests or whatever, think bok choy. Feng Shui.
Yeah.
So that's first thing.
So true.
Pronunciation, let's get that out of the way.
Right.
So Feng Shui has been around for a little over 6,000 years. So like Ayurveda, which is the Indian traditional medical approach to health and well-being, Feng Shui is something that is tried and true. I call it the art and science of Feng Shui. And there's two reasons for that. The great irony of my life is that as a child I absolutely hated math. And all of the formulas that we use and the analysis that I am required to do when I'm working with a client is based on numbers. So what are you going to do? But it's a fascinating science. I started experimenting with it in the 90s, And I have always believed that we impact and are impacted by the energies around us. We
I
are
believe
energy.
that, for sure.
Absolutely. So the Chinese use the word qi. Qi is the life force. So I like to say, particularly when there are men listening who sort of poo-poo this as woo-woo stuff.
Oh, my husband being one.
There you go. So I say, George Lucas had it right in Star Wars. There is a force, and the Chinese call it qi. And in Feng Shui, the name Feng Shui actually is translated from wind and water. So the energies that we are referring to are born on the wind and land on water. So thousands and thousands of years ago, Feng Shui was used initially for the placement of tombs, because the Chinese are an ancestor worshipping culture. And hi there.
Hi, Debbie.
So
Thanks for watching.
what happened was, believing that the ancestors could intercede and help to provide an abundant life in this life, if you position their tomb in a very auspicious direction, then they would look favorably upon you, and good fortune
Right.
would follow. Then we come to the time of the unification of China, and the emperors would always have a master Feng Shui practitioner at the
Yes.
court, but they could only work their magic, so to speak, on behalf of the emperor, and it was on pain of death. They could not share their knowledge, or they would lose their lives. Now, like any knowledge, it wants to be shared, it wants to be used. So what's happened over the millennia is that little bits and pieces of the true Feng Shui came out and made its way to the West, wrapped in a whole bunch of superstition and other stuff. So
That's
little
the voodoo
itty
part.
Little itty bitty bit of truth. So when you say that you know sort of the basics of the principles, most people, if they know anything at all about Feng Shui, talk about the Bagua map. Oh, I've got
Yes.
a prosperity corner, I've got a career corner, I've got a relationship corner. And I say to my clients, on one level, yes, that is true, but that has to do with the building, your home, your office, your cottage, whatever. It's the space.
Right.
And that's fine, but I'm more interested in helping you. And so the space, we talk about lo shu. For us as individuals, we're talking about our auspicious and inauspicious directions, and that's your Minghua. And that is the same no matter where in the world you go. So your same 4 auspicious directions, you could be here, you could be in China, you could be on the moon, doesn't matter. Those directions will always be auspicious for you. In the same way, the 4 that are inauspicious will be the same for you. So
But that is based on your birth, right? Like
it's based on
time
date of birth and determining, and also gender, and determining are you in what's called the East life group or the West life group.
Right.
And you will have a life number that is calculated. See, there's the math again.
Lots of math.
Lots of math. And so what I do to be of greatest benefit to my clients is to work with their Minghua, and then I use several different schools of Feng Shui. There's Compass School, there's Form School, there's Flying Stars, there's a number of different 24 mountains, all of this. I combine 3 or 4, depending on the location of the home or business, that are going to give my clients the most beneficial information for them. Building is important, but not as important as, what
Right.
you need to know.
Right.
And so I typically will look at Form School, which is how is the building physically positioned. And traditional Feng Shui says you have a mountain at your back, you have hills at the side, and you have running water in front.
And that's why, when people talk about the back, it's always good to have a solid foundation that supports you in the back too. Like that's kind of like the
Yes.
idea behind that, right?
Well, and the way to think about it is think about sitting down in an easy chair. You've got a nice back that's high up and supporting you right up to your shoulders, your arms are comfortable on the sides, and then you are open to everything that's in front.
To receive.
Correct. Now, that was great thousands of years ago in rural China. Most of us are not living there. So how do you translate Form School? Very briefly, a fence at the back of your property is your mountain. If you have hedges or other fencing or trees planted along the sides, those become the arm of the chair. And in modern life, we don't have rivers running and transport usually in front of us. The roads are the rivers. This is how the energy is traveling down. And for anyone who's ever driven up the DVP in Toronto,
there's a lot of energy there.
well, you'll notice there's a certain spot when you're going northbound where all of a sudden traffic slows down.
Yes,
Whether or not there is an accident doesn't matter. It just slows down. Do you want to know why?
No, tell us.
In ancient times, there was a riverbed that ran 90 degrees to the northbound DVP. As I said, Feng Shui is born on wind, lands on water, so that energy wants to follow that ancient riverbed, which means you're driving along and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden you've got this sort of confused energy, and you know you shouldn't be wanting to turn left to follow the flow of the river. And so there's this thing that's going on in your head. It's confused energy. And then as you are continuing to drive and hopefully stay in your lane, then you get through it. You get past the riverbed, and the energy seems clear.
Oh,
And you're
okay.
thinking clear again.
Never thought of it like that. Or saw it as such.
Yes.
Yes.
But very often this is it. We don't understand the energetic imprints in the world around us and how they are still affecting us.
Yes.
And so, for instance, people who have water at the back of their property, or who discover that they are in a building that was put up on an ancient burial ground, or whatever, all of these energies are still present in the planet, and they're having an impact on us, whether it's at home, or in an office building, or in a commercial space, because I work with commercial space as well. And so you need to be aware of your physical environment, what's going on there. But then it comes down to you and interacting with your space. So one of the things that can be a challenge, whether it's at home or in the office, is dealing with a pair of flying stars, 2 pairs of stars, 2, 9, and 9, 2. And that's stupid chi.
Stupid chi.
You know those meetings that you go into in boardrooms that go on and on
Yes.
and on,
We've been
and
to a few of those.
Yeah, nobody ever gets anything done in those. If you were to do the analysis of that space, I would bet you nickels to peanuts that room has stupid chi energy. So you don't want, if you're building space, you don't want your executive offices there, you don't want your meeting rooms there. You want to avoid putting critical business aspects in spaces that have that confused energy. At home, if your kids are struggling doing their homework, I had a client in Toronto, and their son had this lovely little setup on the 3rd floor, but he wouldn't sit still, he couldn't focus, he couldn't get anything done. And when I did the analysis, of course, it was in the stupid chi area. So we moved the desk, and all of a sudden he's happily up there for hours at a time. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He would do his craft projects there. So understanding the energy that is impacting you, is it supporting you, is it causing you to have difficulty, is one of the most important aspects of doing Feng Shui. The other is health. And yes, we all want to talk about money. And if you have things set up correctly, the money will flow. But it's more important that, yes, health is the first wealth.
For sure.
So, for instance, I had a client who...
Just let me just go very quickly, sorry to interrupt. Debbie, and we have another someone watching right now. If you can just let us know that you are actually hearing us and seeing us, that would be great. You're on and you're watching, so I'm assuming that you're seeing us. But if you can just give us a thumbs up or something like that and let us know that you're hearing us, okay, that would be great. But anyway.
And if you have questions, let us know.
Yes.
So, I had gone to do a home office consultation, and it's kind of like being a doctor or a lawyer when you're at a cocktail party, and people always say, "Can I just get you to look at this?"
Yes, of course, of course.
So this particular client asked me to go upstairs, and as soon as I went up the stairs, the family bathroom was there, and I realized that there was going to be a toilet line impact on one of the bedrooms. So I asked her, "Whose room is that?" It was her son, and I said, "Does he have any health concerns?" And she said, "Well, he's always complaining about his feet."
Yes.
Now, as it happened, when I explained to her what a toilet line is, where was it crossing? It was crossing the foot of the bed, exactly where his feet were. So I very quickly did a workup to get his life number, determine which life group he fell into, get his auspicious directions. And I said, in fact, his bed shouldn't even be where it is right now. It should be on the other side of the room. And making that move took him out of that toilet line. So for those of you who are watching who don't know what a toilet line is, imagine...
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Thanks for tuning in.
Imagine that you are sitting on the toilet and there is a line of waste energy which moves straight ahead ad infinitum. So terrible for crossing beds, for crossing kitchens, especially food prep area. There was a restaurant that I was in, and when I looked at where the public washroom was in the toilet line, it immediately crossed food prep, cash register, and food display area. So I took the owner aside and I explained to her how to fix it. Because it is a relatively easy fix, and you don't want that waste energy crossing your body, crossing your food. So here's the simple answer. It can sometimes take two people to get it positioned correctly. The way to stop toilet line energy, first of all, close the lid of the toilet. Moms love me.
I am crazy about that.
Moms love me when I say this because they say, now you don't have to take the rap for this. It's not a gender thing. It is a health thing. So lid down on the toilet, first and foremost. And then you want to position a mirror the same width as the widest point of the toilet from the floor, because toilets sit on the floor, they're not raised generally, to the top of the tank. So you need a mirror, not framed, unless you can take off the bottom part of the frame so it sits on the floor correctly, but you want to position the mirror so that it is totally blocking the toilet, with the reflective side facing the toilet. Now this is where it can get a little funny sometimes. People say, I don't want to look at myself while I'm sitting on the toilet.
So true.
Exactly. So usually there is another room on the other side of the bathroom. So there's likely a closet there. We can position the mirror in the closet so that nobody's even going to see it.
But the reflective side facing the toilet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is stopping that flow.
Yes.
And this is one beef I have with architects. They don't think about the fact that toilet energy exists.
Hi, Tanya. Thanks for tuning in.
It's, you can look at, on the newspaper, does anybody read newspapers anymore? The Toronto Star always used to have floor plans for condos, houses, whatever. And so I would practice on those when I was first learning Feng Shui. And inevitably, toilet lines were crossing kitchens, crossing bedrooms.
What's Lori say? My toilet line would technically cross
the foot of your bed.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we would need to talk about for you, Lori, is your bed in the right direction to begin with? And I'll talk about that in a moment. If it is, then we would just have to work to get the toilet line reflected back so that it stays in the bathroom.
Yeah. And aside from the toilet, like what I find with most homes that are built these days, it makes it challenging for Feng Shui. You know, how doorways and things like that cut across the bed, like doorways and toilet lines pointing to your feet. Like all of that can affect your overall health, right?
Oh,
Physical
absolutely.
health.
Absolutely.
But because we have closets and his and hers closet, master en suites and doorways and windows, there's just so many ways.
And the biggest issue, although it's not so much in current design trends, but those mirrored closet doors.
Yes.
Those are horrible because you think about the fact energy is constantly flowing in different directions. Any mirror that you position is reflecting whatever energy is coming into it. So if it's reflecting an inauspicious direction with poor stars, you are massacring yourself. I literally had to tell a woman to have her husband move out of the marriage bed. She told me they'd been in this house for 20-odd years. He was becoming increasingly ill every single day. And when I looked at where the bed was positioned, and on his side, right next to floor-to-ceiling mirrored doors, he was sleeping on his D4, which is the worst possible direction that you can be in. There were very bad stars there, and it was all being doubled. And because Qi will move back and forth between mirrored surfaces and windows, and there was an ensuite to the left, and there was a window there, so he's lying, and this stuff is constantly back and forth across his body. I said, you have to get him out of this bed. This is killing him.
Yes.
And fortunately, they had a number of different bedrooms. He was able to pick one that positioned him well, first of all, to heal, and then secondly, to be supportive of him while he was sleeping. So it can be a challenge sometimes.
But I do, again, like what I recommend to my clients too, and I do this at home, and my friends, my family think I am crazy, but my children have been taught to keep the toilet lid closed because mom will go bananas on them for that specific reason, but like keeping doors closed too, right?
Yes.
And not having it open, especially when you're sleeping and things like that.
Well, and the other thing too is, because I know that you do staging as well as organizing, when you are wanting to sell your home, and most homes have some kind of a powder room on the main floor. So the first thing, you walk in, do you really want to see an open door with a toilet seat up? I don't think so.
Aesthetically it's not even a good thing.
Lid down, door shut, mirror in place, and you're good to go with your toilets. And people are less resistant when I talk about the fact, do you want that energy crossing your food? You know, I mean, and here's another thing. This is not specifically Feng Shui, but here's another thing for the bathroom. Think about where your toothbrushes are located right now.
It's almost lunchtime.
Put them away. Put them away. So that's just some very sort of basic information. It's one of the problems that inevitably comes up in at least one bathroom in every home consultation that I do. From the same perspective, in an office, if you have a whole floor of a building for your office and you've got individual offices and meeting rooms and that sort of thing, there are bathrooms there somewhere. And so you need to look at where are they, how can we mitigate the toilet lines if they are crossing. And for instance, any employer of a particular size must have a sick room on site so that if somebody becomes ill, whatever, there's a bed where they can lie down and rest or be seen to by you know, the health and safety person. Well, what if your toilet line is crossing that bed? So, all kinds of applications for this.
But you brought up a really good point too. Like we have some entrepreneurs, more than likely entrepreneurs watching us or watching the replay later. Like, you know, the position of your desk, because when I go in and I work in a home for staging, I always reposition the desk within the home office. So whether it's a home office that you have or an actual corporate office, the position of your desk can really help boost your success as well, right? So talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. So understanding again which are the 4 directions that support you and which do not. The auspicious directions all start with an A prefix. So AA in Feng Shui is not that organization that helps people with alcohol addiction. It is your best direction. It is where you are most prosperous and feel the most vitality. So ideally, you would like to have your desk in that direction and preferably facing that direction as well. Then we have A1, which is the health and healing direction. So if you're recovering from something, it's a great direction to sleep in, to sit in. It will help support your recovery. A2 is longevity and harmonious relationships. And in business, we do business based on building relationships with potential clients, with existing clients, with vendors, and all of that sort of thing. So if you can't get your desk into your AA, putting it in A2, and especially having your phone, if you do a lot of your work on the phone, your computer, having those in your A2 is also very good. Or the door into your office in your A2. And again, we look at the stars that are associated. You can have a great direction with really bad stars, but we can fix that, mitigate it. And same difference, you can have a door that's in a bad direction for you, but it's got great stars. Doorways are easier to live with because they're not where you spend a lot of, nobody stands in the doorway. It's a transit point. So to have good stars in a bad direction with a door is not that big a deal, because you're not standing there for hours and hours and hours on end. If you're a teacher and where you position yourself to teach or you speak, and you have put yourself into one of your inauspicious directions, your audience is not going to understand what you're trying to explain to them. So it's important to know for yourself and to be able to recognize what are your good directions.
Right. Yes.
So your key business tools, your desk, your computer, your phone, you want them all to be in a good direction, facing a good direction, and hopefully you've got really good stars there too. Right. Which is the case in my office.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, you have, you have a great direction.
I appreciate you saying that you feel that calm, relaxed energy, because this office is not set up the way the previous tenant had it. Trust me, it was a disaster. So I came in and fixed it all.
Right. So, and you know, that's another good discussion point here, is that, you know, is it safe to say that most homes are not set up ideally for Feng Shui? But even having said that, there are fixes, right? So there, we can use Feng Shui cures, as they call them, to fix things and still bring in and invite in that positive chi that we want for our business and life.
Absolutely. We can manage the flow of energy in a home. And, sorry, Lori's question, how is it we figure out on our own? It is complicated, Lori.
That's why we need experts and consultants.
It's depending on what's happening in the home and how many people are involved. One of the biggest challenges, and it often happens, is you will have a couple, one is east life, one is west life. So positioning the bed so that it's in a good direction for both of them can sometimes be a challenge. But there are ways to get around it. So for instance, when we look at 24 mountains, each of the 8 directions is made up of 45 degrees. Each of those 45-degree spans has 3 15-degree segments. Those are the mountains. So even
that's way too much math for me.
That's why you bring me in. I do the math. I suffer through it. But even if it's a bad direction, there will be a segment of it that is good. So for instance, I worked with a lady who did a job share as a receptionist, and she never felt comfortable with where the phone was. And when we did the analysis, it's because it was her worst direction. And you're on the phone, you're making appointments, you're providing customer service. So cubicle setup didn't have a lot of leeway, but we found that good slice for her. And we actually marked with tape on the desk when she was there, that's where the phone was.
Should be.
When the other lady was there, who cares? She could put it wherever she wanted. But she knew where to position the phone in order to get the benefit of the good energy in that bad direction for her. So even if you are in cubicle hell, as I refer to it, there are ways, unless it is such an extreme situation, in which case I suggest you talk to someone about switching workstations, which happens sometimes. Sometimes, residentially, I will have people switch out of the master bedroom, because it's not good for them, into a room that supports their health and well-being. And similarly in business, for anybody who works out of their home, who does any kind of holistic treatments. I had a client many years ago who was having a problem with clients coming in for treatments and then leaving without paying, or just not showing up, not canceling their appointments. And when I looked at the room that she was using, the stars at the door were 2, 3. 2 is illness. 3 is conflict, combats, and arguments. So every time somebody went through the door, that was the energy they were taking into her healing space. And it was in her D4, the worst possible direction.
Yeah, what a conflict.
So I suggested that she flip and put her son, who never went to bed before 4 o'clock in the morning, teenager, I can't sleep, they switched rooms. And I got a message from her the next morning, and she said, before I'd even finished moving things around, people showed up at my door wanting to book appointments. The phone was ringing off the hook. My son came down the next morning after having gone to bed at a regular time and said, oh my God, I feel rejuvenated. Now, when have you ever heard a teenager use that word?
That's
for
a big
good
word
night's
for
sleep? So the impact can be instantaneous. And you don't even have to have it all done. But, you know, there is a place for intention along with what you are doing. So if your intention is to clear the energies, to put things in their proper places, and that includes us as people, you've got all kinds of support now that you weren't accessing before. And it makes a huge difference.
For sure, for sure. And, you know, I'm totally a believer. I feel it because I know that there's energy not just around us, but in the things around us. Like not even like live things. There's always energy in everything that we do, and that in itself is science, right? Like we
That's
know
quantum
that
physics.
We know that for a fact is science. But we do know that as much as Feng Shui intrigues many people, it also, there's still a lot of non-believers out there as well, right? So do you feel that, you know, for all of us, it's, we can always employ some level of Feng Shui in our lives?
Oh, absolutely.
For like benefits in many different ways, wouldn't you say?
Yes, since I started studying it back in the late 80s, early 90s, I live my life according to the principles of Feng Shui. There's a timing formula that we can use to decide when is the most auspicious date and time. So for instance, when I got married, I was looking at dates in 2004, and there's, again, a complicated formula that you have to go through because there's two people that you have to be looking for, you know, the good time. And I knew 2004 was not the right year. So I started looking in 2005, and ultimately, with a pile of screwed up paper on the floor around me, I knew exactly the day, the 2-hour window, and that's when we got married. Our best time was between 11 and 1. I said, okay, we're getting married at high noon.
And you know what? It's so crazy, but this is a big thing for Asian people. Like, like the marriage date, the parents and the elderlies all get involved and help you pick the date. Like the date is kind of out of your hands because they want to make sure you get the best possible date for a long-lasting and healthy marriage, right? And it goes even far beyond marriage, really. It goes to the day of your death. So let me give you just a very quick example. So my cousin, my aunt, who was very ill, and she was in the hospital, and she was not going to make it. The doctors were saying that they're going to pull life support, etc. And my cousin stepped in and says, no, it can't be done this day. Like, they were scheduling the life support removal because it just was not a good day for her to leave this earth, you know? Like, it boils down to even that, you know?
Well, and again, it sounds a little bit, hi Helen, sounds a little bit like woo-woo.
It does. I know people think so.
But it's not. I mean, people have been looking at astrology for millennia as well. And we all want the assurance that it's a good day, even if it's a good day to pass on to the next level of experience. And I always, when I'm looking at starting a new program, introducing something new in my business or doing something different in my life, I'm always looking at, is it an auspicious day? And if it's not, I won't do it. Speaking engagements, all of that sort of thing. I was booking one yesterday, and I looked at the dates that were available, I checked them all, and I said, okay, this one is good. And that's the one I took.
Well, most of us don't have that experience and that knowledge, so we just randomly pick a date that's open in our calendar.
Yes, exactly. But, you know, when it's something as important, and culturally, yes, for the Chinese, death is as important as life.
Yes, for sure.
You want to make sure that you are picking an auspicious day for this ending of one journey and beginning of another. And the other thing is, you know this, but for those who aren't Chinese and don't know, in Feng Shui, the number 4 is never, ever selected. Not as a date to do something, not in your address, because the Chinese word for 4 sounds like death. And so real estate agents, if they have Asian clients, no, don't even bother showing them a house with a 4
Yes.
in the address.
Yes.
They won't.
I
look
was
at
one
it.
of those clients many moons ago when we first bought our first house, and I think I drove my real estate agent crazy because I said I don't care how great the price is, how great the location is, how great the house is. If it has a number 4 in it, don't even show it to me. That was me.
Well, and there are other things too. When you look at the pairs, there are pairs of auspicious or prosperity numbers, which are, you know, there are 4 of them: 1, 6, 2, 7, 3, 8, and 4, 9. So those are great pairs. There are also numbers which do not go together well and which carry very inauspicious energy with them. 2, 5, and 5, 2 is very, very bad. 2, 5, 8. According to traditional Chinese, is going to bring ghosts. And you will find often that the location of churches, temples, other sacred buildings, they have that 2, 5, 8 in there. The idea is that there is a more open door between earthly and spiritual side. So not necessarily a bad thing, depending on the purpose for the building. Do you want to live there? Probably not. Probably not, unless you're a Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
1, 2, and 2, 1. That pair of numbers is associated with divorce, marital breakdown. So, for instance, I will never ever consider a house that has a 1, 2 or 2, 1 in the address. I don't care how beautiful it is. I won't even look at it.
See, I don't even know that myself, honestly. So.
Well, and it's interesting because I work with clients who are looking for a new home. And one of the things we're looking at, of course, is address, is an auspicious one. And then for those who are purchasing, I actually offer a little mini package. I will do an assessment of up to 3 homes for them. And that includes things like when they pick the one that they want to put an offer on, helping them with the numbers in the offer so that it's auspicious for them. And I'm not working for the seller, I'm working for the buyer.
Right.
And then once
Unless the seller hires you.
well, and that could happen.
Yes,
That
of
could
course.
happen as well.
Of course.
But the idea is that we want to bring our best to every situation.
Yes.
When you understand your own energy patterns, when you understand the energies that are around you, and how they support you or they don't support you, can you mitigate that through using cures, as you mentioned, and there are a number of them. Sometimes I've had to say to a client, this is just not a good house for you. It just isn't. And you need to go somewhere else.
And I've done that, like when we were shopping for our first home and we were going into view certain homes. There was this one home, I think it was in, I forget, it was on the west end, I can't remember what it is now. It was a great big home, really beautiful, lots of space, inside and out land. My husband completely fell in love with it. But I just did not have a great feeling about it. Like, I stood at the door and I just did not feel good about it. And I said to him, I don't want this place because there's just something about it that is causing me not to want to go through this door. And anyway, we didn't buy it, of course, because I was just adamant. I listened to my inner voice at that point in time. My husband thought I was crazy because it was such a great house, but you know what? It obviously it's all worked out, but I didn't feel good about it. And sometimes you just have to listen to your voice. We are running out of time, so I want to talk about one thing quickly.
Yes.
Clutter. I deal with clients,
Yes,
you know,
you do.
that sometimes they just have clutter. Sometimes they have to declutter because they're preparing to sell and things like that. So, you know, very quickly, talk to us about clutter and how it impacts the flow of qi.
Okay. Clutter is static energy. Now, as we've said, every kind of energy vibrates at some frequency. Much of it denser. Desks, chairs, cars, things that we think of as being solid have a much slower and lower vibration and frequency. Clutter is one of those things that is a very heavy, dense energy, and it's sticky. It draws more clutter to it. And
That's so true.
it's like dust bunnies.
That is so true.
It's like dust bunnies. But the fact is that, you know, you can have a little bit of clutter. It's like littering. They always say, if you see litter, pick it up, because if something stays there, it's going to attract more. Same thing with clutter in your house. And what happens is that little pile of clutter starts to take, you've got a drawer. Every one of you, I know.
Oh, we all have a junk drawer.
Yes. But then it spreads to the next drawer. Or maybe you've got a junk room. Or maybe you've got a junk garage. And the longer the clutter stays there, and the more it attracts more clutter into the space, the heavier and more oppressed you begin to feel. So whether you are planning to sell your home or to stay in it and love it more, because I know you help people with that too.
Yes.
You got to get rid of the clutter.
Yes.
And when you do that, there's such an energetic boost that you get from it. And nowadays, with organizers and stagers who can help you sort through it, what's garbage, what needs to be kept, what can be repurposed.
And donated.
Donated, absolutely. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of donating
for
stuff.
For sure.
Because, you know, if we don't love it, get it out of the house.
Give it new life, right? Like, give it new life, give it to somebody who's going to love it.
Exactly. Or who is in need of whatever that is.
Absolutely.
You know, I would rather have something leave my house and know that it's going to someone who really can use it than have it sitting in my basement or whatever, collecting dust and doing nothing.
So yeah. So that is kind of the end of our segment. You know, we can talk about this topic for days. Days and days. What's that?
February 5th, Year of the Earth Pig.
That's right.
Is coming. So if you are a pig in Chinese astrology, very quickly, the pig was the last animal to come.
Yes.
When they were called. Pigs are associated with wealth, with fertility, with the good life. And so if you are a pig, this is going to be your year. Enjoy it. Remember moderation in all things. And gung hei fat joy.
Yeah. Yes. So as I was just saying earlier, we can talk about this topic forever, Patti. And you've been so wonderful and so knowledgeable and shared so much great information. So if you have any more questions for us and for Patti, please leave it in the comment section. Patti is also going to be, thanks, Helen. Patti is going to also leave her contact information in the comments too, so if you want to reach out to Patti directly, feel free to do that. But that is it for today, and thank you so much for joining us. And for those who are going to watch the replays, please just make a comment and tell us that you're watching the replay afterwards too, okay? Thanks a bunch, and have a fantastic rest of today. It's a little bit chilly, but stay warm. Bye.
Bye-bye.